Here's a typical game in progress of Rise of the Rockstar. I've got 3 players going at this point. Each player has cards in their hand. These are called hand cards. Then they have up to 5 cards they can lay out on the board. This is their planning area. This is also known as their board. And each player also has some progress points. This is our demo board, so these are not the final progress points. These are just the flat marbles we use until we can pay our artist. And then we're also subbing fame for poker chips. There are 2 decks of cards. The first deck is the blue deck, which is the contact card. And at the moment, we've just got our demo cards in here. They're finished, but we are waiting on the Kickstarter to have the artwork done. This deck is the contact deck. This deck represents people and situations in which you would go out into the world and make contact to promote yourself. The other deck is the red deck. This is the event deck. This deck is more of events that happen right then and there, not as much planning or people involved like there are in the contact deck. As players move around the board, they begin in the middle, start on the unknown level of fame. They go all the way around until they can collect 4 of the fame counters. Once they have 4 fame counters, they have to land on this white space, and it might be a different color in the finished product. We're done with the board, but the artwork is waiting the Kickstarter funding. They have to land here exactly, and it sounds like a difficult thing to do, but it really isn't. Once each player has the correct amount of fame for a level, they actually can adjust their rolls. Then they move on to the second level. This is the niche audience. They move around this level until they get the correct amount of fame for this level, and the correct amount of fame for this level is 6 fame. Each time a player goes from one level to the next, they lose the fame they collected and they start over. 4 fame, 6 fame, 8 fame, and then to win the game, they have to collect 10 fame and land on the legendary space on the outer part of the board. They do this by rolling the movement dice and moving in a clockwise fashion around the board. There are several spaces on the board that affect the way a person can move. It affects the way they take their turn. It affects the way they gain money or fame, and I'll go into a couple of those in just a minute. Each player throughout the game draws cards. They either draw contact cards or event cards. When drawing, unless the card or the space actually tells you which deck to draw from, you can pick any deck you want to, any combination, up to the number of cards that you can draw. These cards are divided up into 2 different types of cards. There's cards at the top underneath the title that say a board, and that means that is the player's planning board area, which is the space right in front of their where they sit. They can have up to 5 cards there. And then the other type of card is called a hand card. Right underneath the title it says hand card, and these are the cards that you'll hold on to and play during the game. One advantage is nobody else can see which card you have in your hand. One disadvantage is out on your board, people can see what you have. You can have 5 cards on your planning board and up to 5 cards in your hand. If you happen to draw over 5 cards during a turn, you have to discard at the end of your turn down to 5 cards. And you do gain a progress token for that. Rise of the Rockstar is built around fame. The fame counters are the most important part of the game because that's what allows you to move from level to level and eventually to the legendary space to win the game. You can obtain fame through several different methods. The first and the biggest method is to land on a performance space. There are tons of them on the board, and at that point, when a player lands in a performance space, they roll the performance dice, and they roll a performance roll. Certain cards will adjust those performance rolls. You can spend progress to adjust the performance rolls. You can have a performance roll that's so low that you're forced to lose fame even. So you have to watch out. This is the way a performance roll works. When a player moves onto a performance space, they follow the instructions on the space first. This particular space says gain 1 progress token and roll a performance roll. The player would then gain a progress token and take the performance dice and roll a performance roll. Performance rolls work like this. The player rolls the dice, and the total needs to be at least 8 or higher for you to automatically get a fame counter. If it's any lower, you're in trouble. That means that your performance hasn't gone so well. At this point, the player can spend 2 progress tokens per point to boost this number up to 8 or higher. If a player rolls 2, that means a performance stank, and you're going to lose a fame counter. If a 12 is rolled, the player has aced the performance and gets 2 fame counters. Or, if a lower number is rolled, you can spend those progress tokens to bump that number all the way up to 12 and get your 2 fame counters anyway. The second most important aspect of the game are the progress tokens. With the progress tokens, you can buy fame counters. You gain progress tokens through spaces on the board and through cards. When you haven't been lucky enough to roll great performances or just not landing on the spaces, you can actually spend 10 progress tokens to gain yourself a fame counter. So there are multiple ways to gain fame so that you're not stuck with one particular method. Certain spaces will allow you to automatically gain fame, and cards will also allow you to gain fame as well. The hiatus space represents when a player just needs to take a break from everything. This space also has a special ability. On their next turn, they can actually skip their roll and move phase and just go ahead and move forward or backwards 1 space. Networking spaces represent the networking that a player does in order to get their name out there, in order to connect with the people that will make sure that they become famous. There are also several spaces on the board called bummers. These are negative spaces. If you land on one and you don't have a card or an ability to let you move past it, you're stuck with it. Promotion spaces represent what players do to get their name out there so that everyone will know that they're an up-and-coming artist. Typically, promotions are a positive thing. Sometimes the promotion will affect the player who lands on it, and sometimes it'll affect everybody in the game.